Hello and welcome back to the Gluten Free RN podcast. I'm Nadine, your host for the very important episode number 16, where we're going to talk about celiac disease worldwide and why it's such an issue, not just in the United States, not just in Canada, but everywhere in the entire world. So stay with me as we tackle a very big topic today, celiac disease worldwide. Hi, welcome back to the Gluten Free RN podcast. I think that this is a fascinating topic that we're going to talk about today, which is celiac disease in the world. Celiac disease is not just a problem in the United States. It's not a fad. It didn't just appear on the world stage. It has been around ever since people have eaten wheat or grains. And grains we know came from the Fertile Crescent. And the Fertile Crescent was located in what is now commonly known as Northern Africa and the Middle East. There's several countries that comprise that area. Interestingly enough, because celiac disease is genetic, you would think that the prevalence of celiac disease would be relatively low in those areas. But many, many studies have been done and have actually shown that there is a relatively high prevalence in those populations coming from relatively average risk people in Turkey, Egypt, Tunisia, Lebanon, Kuwait. So all of those areas, any of those countries in the Middle East have a high prevalence of celiac disease despite grains actually coming from there. So you would think that genetically, the people who carried the genes for celiac disease would have died off, natural selection. But that's not the case. And that's not the case for probably many reasons. That is, in fact, the area that celiac disease started from probably 10,000 years ago when they started to grow grains in the Middle East. But then those grains spread all over the world from marauders and invaders and adventurers. So those grains got propagated by people moving around the earth. Those grains were not endemic or indigenous to the North or South American continents. They weren't found anywhere on Australia or in Asia or in Africa, except for Northern Africa for that period of time. And there's a big desert separating North Africa from South Africa or from the southern part of Africa, which is the Sahara Desert. So when we talk about sub-Saharan Africa, we talk about that area, that huge area of the continent that's located under the Sahara Desert. If you want to read a great book about how food spread and how civilizations developed or didn't, I highly recommend a book called Guns, Germs, and Steel. It's a Pulitzer Prize-winning book, and it is a wealth of information about how food spread around the world and why some civilizations actually developed faster than others. But we do know that celiac disease is a huge problem worldwide. Interestingly enough, I'm going to the International Celiac Disease Symposium in 2017 in September. It is going to be held in New Delhi this year. The last one I attended was in Chicago in 2013. So this is where scientists, doctors, interested parties, nurses go to listen to all of the research that's been investigated over the last 2 years. This is a biannual conference, so every 2 years. And I'm very excited to go to New Delhi for a number of reasons. For a long time, people were told that celiac disease did not happen in Asia, that those people could not develop celiac disease because they didn't carry the DQ2 or DQ8 genes. Well, what we found is that that's not true. Number one, anywhere that you actually have people eat wheat, especially people that had predominantly not eaten wheat, but then we changed their diet to more of a what's considered a Western style diet, which includes wheat. Of course, Vietnam was influenced by the French, so they have baguettes. That's a big thing. And one of the world's highest prevalences of celiac disease or incidences of celiac disease is in the Punjabi Indian population. And honestly, it doesn't matter if those people are in India or if they're in Canada or the United States, they're at increased risk for celiac disease. Anybody coming from, especially the Punjabi region of India, should be tested for celiac disease. It would be a great idea. There's many different symptoms people present with, and those are varied. There's over 300 signs and symptoms and associated disorders with celiac disease. So really, if a doctor is looking at any patient, the celiac disease diagnosis should be on the differential diagnosis panel that the doctors actually go, well, this could be celiac disease. It could be a GI bleed. It could be something else that's causing this anemia, but really we have to consider celiac disease. It is the number one autoimmune disease in the world, and it's also grossly underdiagnosed per many, many, many research articles. So what we find is that there's this iceberg of people that have never been tested for celiac disease, but actually have it. And the sooner we find out that people have celiac disease, the more likely that they're going to recover and actually recover fully on a gluten-free diet. I'm a huge advocate for people adopting some variation of a paleo diet, and that's a whole food diet, which is meat and fish and eggs, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables. That doesn't sound like a lot of food, but I can assure you it is plenty. We also know that there's an economic burden for not diagnosing celiac disease early. There's a cost of the ongoing testing. Did you know that it takes an average of 9 to 15 years to get diagnosed with celiac disease in the United States? That's a long time. Of course, we know that some people never get diagnosed correctly with celiac disease, and they die without ever knowing that grains were the cause of many of their health issues, and that some of those health issues, if maybe not all of them, potentially could have been prevented. So we have a high risk population in anybody that carries the DQ2 or DQ8 gene for celiac disease. But then what we find is that there's also another population which could be even larger than the celiac population that are considered to be non-celiac gluten sensitive, or their body still is reacting negatively to the exposure to grains, mostly because of the gluten or the gliadin protein, which is a alcohol-soluble long-chain amino acid protein that our bodies really don't have any enzymes to break down. So as human beings, we should not be eating grains, ideally, but for the people that are predisposed, and we're still trying to figure out what the genetic basis is, it's estimated that between 30 to 50% of the population are actually gene carriers for the DQ2 and or DQ8 gene. So that's a huge part of the population. And really, they should be identified at birth. That would be my ideal, is that we test or do a worldwide mass screening for at least the DQ2 and DQ8 genes so that these people actually know that they are susceptible to developing celiac disease because they are gene carriers. So that would be a great thing to know for people before they have children and as they go through life. It would be a great thing to know that you are susceptible or predisposed to developing celiac disease because you have these genes. But we do know that there's a lot of people that are not diagnosed. And of course, nobody really, there's a very small percentage of the population that knows what their genetic status is for celiac disease. But that's great information. because it's a cut to the chase, as I like to say, for potentially going, hey, you know what? I'm at risk for celiac disease. Could you please test me for it? And then finding the practitioners, whether they're doctors or naturopaths or PAs or nurse practitioners, somebody that you can work with that will order the correct tests to determine whether you are actually a person that has celiac disease. Because it's a simple diet change. Removing gluten is not that big of a deal, provided you have people that are giving you accurate information about where gluten hides. WHO, or the World Health Organization, mentions burden of disease. So the burden of disease for undiagnosed celiac disease is very large because of lost productivity. People are sick. They're fatigued. They don't have, a lot of get up and go sometimes, or their body is falling apart. They're anemic. They have osteoporosis, so their bones might be breaking. They have increased sick time because their immune system is damaged. And then morbidity and mortality, which means sickness and death. So morbidity being sickness, and that can encompass any of the signs or symptoms of celiac disease, but then mortality means death. And so what that means is that people with celiac disease have a much higher mortality. We die sooner or at a younger age than a healthy control. Ideally, we would find these people sooner than later, help them get on a gluten-free diet, do appropriate follow-up so that they are healthier and can actually be productive members of society and live really nice, long lives that are not marred by sickness and disability. A lot of people will tell me, they say, I don't have a problem eating wheat, but I do have lupus or anemia or osteoporosis. I have MS. I have balance issues. I have a hard time losing weight. So these are all indicators that people, while they think they don't have a problem with wheat or celiac disease, are having things that are issues in their health that potentially could point to the fact that the underlying issue is what they're eating. So this is worldwide, as we're finding that people are changing their diets in other countries to more match or look like a Western style diet, which is very wheat centric. So keep in mind that this is a political issue. It's a social issue. It's a personal issue because we all individually have to deal with it. It's a family issue because it is genetic, and it is medical. So our medical practitioners should be supportive of what we find when we go see them. If you are a person with celiac disease, doctors should not, in this day and age, should not be telling you that they just don't believe celiac disease is a disease or a medical issue. It's very much a medical issue, and it needs to be medically managed. So in Italy, if you have celiac disease, you get extra days off work so that you can see your doctor. You get extra days off so that you can shop because it takes longer to shop for gluten-free food. And then no matter where you are in the world, they will send you a box of gluten-free food because food is medicine. And it's much cheaper to do that than it is to try to manage the medical sequelae that happens if you are not actually on a gluten-free diet and managed appropriately. Where else does celiac disease occur? Everywhere. Anywhere that people eat wheat, celiac disease is going to be a potential issue. So South America, Brazil, anywhere that people are eating wheat or grains. So keep in mind that nobody is excluded. It doesn't matter where on earth you are. If you are eating grains, then you are susceptible to developing celiac disease proper if you are a DQ2 and or DQ8 gene carrier. And you're also susceptible to developing non-celiac gluten sensitivity. People really have to be aware of that because it can be somewhat torturous to find out after you've already dealt with cancers and had your intestines resected, pick something. You had your gallbladder or your appendix taken out or both, that maybe you didn't need those surgeries after all. Maybe they were caused by the fact that you were eating grains. That's a hard pill to swallow, but it is huge. And people can present with all types of symptoms. It can be an odd gait, which means people don't walk straight, also known as celiac gluten ataxia. They just can't walk straight. They have balance issues. They might be clumsy. Or dermatitis herpetiformis, which is the rash that goes along with celiac disease. If you have DH or dermatitis herpetiformis, you have celiac disease. So a dermatologist would hopefully be able to pick that up really quickly. But unfortunately, I see a lot of people, and I still see a lot of people in my office who have DH or dermatitis herpetiformis, and it's been misdiagnosed as many different things, such as acne or psychosomatic, which means that the doctors are telling them they're actually causing the rash that is extremely painfully itchy. And that's not a very nice thing to tell people. I had that rash myself, and I can't tell you how many times the doctors actually suggested that I was causing the rash. Oh, that is so maddening. But I still see it. I still see the rash. I still see it being misdiagnosed, and it really needs to be addressed appropriately. And that those skin rashes are an external expression of what's going on internally. So it would be a great idea to heal up the intestines with a diet change, heal the immune system. Eventually the skin will heal and those lesions will go away. I still have some scarring from those lesions, but over the years that rash has cleared up as my intestines have healed. I see that over and over and over again, where you can't make that rash go away until you change the diet. And we see that rash in every ethnicity. So anyone in the entire world can get celiac disease, especially the people that carry the DQ2 and or DQ8 genes. So that's great information to gather. It's a puzzle piece. Finding out your genetic status, whether you're a DQ8 or DQ2 gene carrier, is a part of the puzzle that you should be gathering up to find out if you are at increased risk for celiac disease proper. Because the sooner you know, information is power. And believe me, celiac disease is not a fad, not going away. And we are extremely powerful as a group. It is the largest untapped market in the world, and there's a couple entities that know that. There's some physicians that know that. There's the pharmaceutical companies that know that. There's the food industry that also knows it. So the more you can be aware of how powerful you are, the more you can positively use that power to heal yourself and to educate other people. Because celiac disease is not going to go away. Not until we stop eating grains. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. There's some people that very, very adamantly will defend eating wheat and grains in general. And they're pretty adamant that nobody's going to take their grains away. My favorite thing is when people say, you're going to have to pry my bread out of my cold, dead hands. And I think, really? At one point, that probably would have been me, that I would have said something like that. But those people in particular need to be tested for celiac disease. The people that are the most addicted to grains really are most at risk for developing celiac disease. I know that might sound strange, but sometimes our bodies crave the thing that is bad for it. So if you're craving something, it could be a deficiency, it could be something that needs to be fixed, but it also could be that the very basic issue is that you have celiac disease, your guts are damaged, your immune system is damaged, you have malnutrition and deficiencies that aren't getting replaced because your body can't absorb nutrients, and you have to deal with the underlying issue. So really, once I gave up grains, once I stopped eating bread, those cravings for wheat, barley, rye, and oats actually went away. And I don't even look at that stuff as food anymore because it's so potentially dangerous for my body. And my body reads it as poison. So not only do I avoid it like the plague because it is very damaging to my body and relatively quickly. So I mentioned that I'm going to go to India. So if anybody's ever been to India and they want to give me any pointers or tell me about places to go and see, my other plan is to then go to Thailand. So really what I'm looking for when I go is information about celiac disease, where to eat, how to eat safely, and very interesting things to do. Like I like hiking. So if you have any good hikes in India or Thailand, feel free to leave a message on the iTunes review or send me a message directly, Nadine at glutenfreern.com. I'm really excited to talk about this whole topic again, especially after the conference. Celiac disease in the world is a major issue. It's not going away. And what we do know is that it's a huge economic burden, not only personally for people as individuals, but as families, community, our states, our countries, because we're not able to actually be as productive as we would like to be. And that doesn't mean that we're not productive. It just means that we could be enjoying life at a much higher level without headache or migraines, belly aches, constipation, diarrhea. I mean, the list goes on and on. A lot of people won't leave the house when they have symptoms. That's not fun at all. And it does have a cost associated with it. Again, not just personally, but within the family, our communities, schools, states, and countries. So ideally, what we're going to do is find people that have celiac disease, help them be on a strict gluten-free diet, if not a paleo diet, and let them heal. Help them heal. Do what we can to make sure that people have access to practitioners that actually know what they're talking about when they help people get better from celiac disease, the ravages. We can't see our intestines, but if they're damaged, that damage will speak to our bodies in ways that sometimes don't seem to make any sense. But once you know what to look for, boom, we just get on it. Get on a gluten-free diet and or a paleo diet and let people get better. So just as a reminder, as we wrap up episode 16 of Gluten Free RN podcast, celiac disease is everywhere, every ethnicity, at any age, and with any symptom, or interestingly enough, with no symptoms. It's estimated that up to 50% of the people with intestinal damage or villus atrophy actually would report no symptoms. They feel perfectly fine. They might feel perfectly fine because they've always felt that way and that is normal to them, or they've just always felt fine, like they really have no symptoms. So it's all over the board. You can be ruled in for celiac disease, but at this point in history, you really can't be ruled out for celiac disease proper. Even if you're a DQ2 or DQ8 gene carrier and your antibody test is negative, that doesn't mean it's not going to be positive in 6 months, a year, or 2 years. A lot of things to keep in mind. There's a lot of information out there. Please make sure you're getting it from reliable sources. If you have any questions, please contact me. This has been a great episode of Gluten Free RN, Celiac Disease in the World. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to episode 17, which I have yet to determine what the topic is going to be. There's so many topics to choose from. At this point, I'd like to thank Tim Hallowell from The Podcasting Guy for being my executive producer. and also Pulse Media Network, a network of fabulous nurses and healthcare providers that are also podcasters and great supporters of the Gluten Free RN podcast. Thanks again for joining me, Nadine Gruskowiak, the Gluten Free RN, taping this episode in Salem, Oregon, as I plan a trip to New Delhi, India for the International Celiac Disease Symposium in September. Stay tuned for more information about that great event. Until next time, stay gluten-free, eat healthy, watch what you eat.